retirement, financial freedom, and getting out of the rat race. You've heard these terms before, but is the path that you're on right now going to help you achieve financial freedom? Although financial freedom doesn't guarantee happiness, it can make it a lot easier to do the things that we love with the people that we love. In our first few episodes, we're going to lay out a plan for you of what you need to do in order to retire wealthy and happy.
Are you a working professional but struggling to balance the workload of your career, family, obligations, and preparing for your financial future? If so, this podcast is for you. You've spent years learning your craft, and now it's time to focus on your financial future. This podcast will teach you what you need to retire wealthy and happy. Let's dive in.
Welcome to our podcast. This is the first of what we hope will be a very comprehensive podcast series on financial preparedness. Although I am going to be the host today, we plan to rotate the host duties depending on the topic, the guest, and our individual availabilities. Our first 3 episodes, including this one, will be foundational, meaning that we're going to cover some basic information that will be needed to completely understand some of the concepts that we cover later on. We encourage you to listen and re-listen to these foundational episodes and share them with your friends and family that you think could use some knowledge and encouragement in financial preparedness and retirement. Let's take a few minutes and introduce you to our 3 hosts. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge that we are not trained financial planners. We are investors and business owners that have learned a few financial concepts worth sharing. We will have a number of guests that we'll talk with to get the perspective of a number of different types of professionals. Our 3 hosts are Ben Waller, Earl Klein, and myself, Roger Jacobson. Let's take a few minutes to get to know each other. Ben Waller, why don't you describe yourself a little bit and your background?
Yeah, Roger, thanks for giving me a minute to introduce myself. I happen to originally be from the state of Wisconsin, so I represent the cheese state. I'm currently married. I have 2 young children that require a lot of my energy and love. When I'm not working, I like to spend time outside. I'm big into boating. About a little over 10 years ago, I started my career in real estate sales. I've enjoyed helping a lot of people buy and sell real estate. And throughout that time, I was also doing some real estate investing on my own so that I could learn about how to be a real estate investor. I spent many years learning probably the painful way about how to be a real estate investor. A lot of life lessons that probably could have been learned faster, but I will never forget them. From a young age, I always wanted to be a real estate investor, and I've slowly grown into learning how to do that. I also was able to go back to school and earn my master's in real estate development from the University of Utah a couple years ago. It was a great experience. It taught me a lot about real estate development and also how to be an investor. A lot of great business skills that I learned there. And throughout my career, I've tried to do a lot of things on my own, which I learned was a mistake. I realized that to really be a successful individual, you're much better off working with a team to accomplish much bigger things, because each of us has skills and talents that we bring to the table, but there's also weaknesses that each of us have. And as we're able to work with other people, we can do a much greater work together. So we've been able to put together a team of real estate investors to do much bigger projects. And now we're here together as our team, trying to help people learn about investing so that they can grow their wealth. Roger, that's my quick introduction. I'll turn it back over to you.
That's great. How long were you a realtor?
I've had my real estate license about 13 years. I technically still have my real estate license, but I am focusing more on real estate investing now.
That's great. And Earl Klein, why don't you give us a little intro?
Well, first, I want Ben to acknowledge that a lot of his success is due to me, because I point out his weaknesses every single day. No, I'm just kidding, Ben. So a little bit about me. I originally from Salt Lake City. I graduated from the University of Utah, currently married. I have 7 kids. All of them are grown, by the way. And life takes on a whole different perspective after the kids are gone, and you actually get to go and do the things that you really wanted to do that you couldn't when you had to drag your kids along with you. So if some of you are not to that point yet, you'll hopefully will look forward to it. It's a lot better than what I probably thought it was. My degree at the U was in finance. I started wanting to go into engineering. I think I took one class on programming computers, and I figured out that the computers were a lot smarter than I was. And so I thought I'd get into something that's really easy to do, which was real estate. So that's why I'm here. I used to joke that all the A students went to work on Wall Street. When I first started, I thought a lot about working on Wall Street. The B students end up in insurance and banking, and the dummies that could just barely make it to class, myself included, we ended up doing real estate. So that's why I'm here. I grew up in a real estate family. My dad was a builder. I went to school or went to work with Dad almost every day in the summer from the time I was about 10 years old. So jumping into real estate was really, really natural for me. Did an internship while I was in college down in California. I think I spent 15 years down in California working for some fairly large property management companies. At one point, I was the vice president of a publicly traded REIT that owned about 80,000 apartment units. And so I've been around the block a few times when it comes to real estate, but I never really got the satisfaction nor the financial success that I was looking for until I went off on my own. And quite honestly, it's from working with these two other guys that we put this team together, and I think we're doing incredible things. So, Roger, thanks for giving me a second.
That was great. And I think one of the biggest highlights from that I'm going to take away is that your father brought you into real estate. My father didn't do real estate, but I wanted something better. So that's why I got into real estate.
We're good.
So for me, I started out in a non-real estate way with a lot of books and stuff. And I would drive around cleaning carpets. I was about 22 years old, and I remember the exact place and time and moment when I was talking to one of my customers, and he said, I just made $40,000 on this house, and I thought it'd be a nice gesture to clean carpet. Well, at the time, I was probably making about $25,000 a year, going around, driving to people's houses, cleaning their carpets covered in chemicals and cat fur, and that pushed me to it. So I went to my childhood friend, and I said, we need to buy a house and make some money. And so we bought a house using a FHA loan. I gave my money to his mom. She gifted it to him for the FHA loan, and we owned our first house. This house was a beater. We were going to fix it, and we didn't call it flipping back then, but we were going to flip it and make some money. As soon as we got into the house, we found out that we did not have the money to fix it or the knowledge, so we both got jobs in construction. I've been in and around construction ever since. I've done everything from being a finish carpenter to a general contractor. I've done some developments. I've done a 255 unit apartment building, and I've also done a very large 84,000 square foot self-storage facility out in Magna. Currently, I'm doing some flipping, working on some short-term Airbnbs, done all sorts of construction and that type of thing. Now I am getting engaged. I have a fiance. Together between us, we have 8 kids total. I have 3 from a previous relationship, and she has 5. And most of them are adults. We still have a 14, a 17, and a 16-year-old. My sons help me with the construction, so that's probably one of the most rewarding things I have. But I'm definitely interested in having much more passive income so I can enjoy more vacations and more freedom. Thanks for giving me a minute to talk about myself.
Hey, Roger, tell me, you and I've known each other for at least 3, maybe 4 years now. We've worked together almost all of that time. Tell me how your perspective on getting out of the rat race has changed in the last short period of time, last couple, 3 years.
Well, I think the thing that really surprises me now is, as a worker, when you're in construction, you make money when you go to work. Every time your hammer hits, you make money. As a house flipper, we've gone through what is probably a 13-year appreciation where houses have been going for more money when they're flipped than you could ever possibly dream. Well, that has come to a screeching halt. Houses are now sitting. They're being sold for less money than you paid and put into them. And so as I'm looking at that, I'm pushing into flipping for short-term and long-term. So as I buy these houses and I'm getting less and less money from flipping them, I'm getting more and more money that is residual and seeing the payoffs in short-term rentals and long-term buy and holds. And so as I'm doing this, I'm looking at how much I'm making, how much more I have to buy to make that monthly cost, and how soon I can be completely out of the rat race and live the life I want and drive the vehicles I want and take the vacations I want.
Very good. Roger and I both, by the way, I don't know if we're completely out of the rat race, but we're pretty close. I think we both spend more time on the back of a motorcycle than we do working in the office. And so it's part of our lifestyle that's slowly evolving for much more for the better for me. So
I still think I'm 100% in the rat race. I can see the timeline where that becomes a reality, but today was a rat race kind of day. So much of what we want to talk about revolves around getting out of the rat race. We want to turn some time over to Ben to go over exactly what it means to be able to get out of the rat race.
Roger, thanks for giving me a minute to talk about this. Getting out of the rat race, the term rat race is not new. It's been around for a really long time. There's a guy named Robert Kiyosaki who's pretty famous for writing a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And a lot of people give him credit for coining the term get out of the rat race. And even though he didn't create it, he definitely did a good job of using that to define the path to financial freedom. So in this episode, we're talking a lot about getting out of the rat race. And we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and what Robert Kiyosaki was trying to teach in that book. So if you haven't read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's a great teaching tool. And one of the main principles in that book is that there's two different dads, right? We've got rich dad and we've got poor dad. And in the story or in the book, he's talking about his dad, who he labels as the poor dad. Now, it's kind of confusing at first when you're listening to this because his dad was a school principal. He had gone to college. He was very intelligent. But every day his dad would go to work. He would get paid for the work he did. And he had the mentality that if he went to school, got a good job, that he would live happily ever after. Because that's kind of what we're taught in school. Like that's how you succeed at life. But in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the rich dad lived a slightly different life. And that's what Robert Kiyosaki is trying to point out here, is that the rich dad, he had a different mentality. He was more of a business owner and an investor. And the rich dad was able to spend his time doing things that he wanted to. He didn't have to go to work all day, every day, because he was able to create financial freedom for himself, which gave him control over his time. Now, that's a huge thing that we're going to continue talking about in this podcast. But talking more about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I want to ask the question, where is it that people are learning their financial skills? Because the reality is we're not being taught good financial skills in our school systems. The place we're learning financial skills is out in the real world. And if you put in the time and the energy to learn about it on your own, all the information is available to you, but it's something that you actually have to put time into because it's not just going to fall in your lap. I mean, one of the things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in that book is that financial skills really should be taught in the home, Well, I mean, everybody, all three of us have children, and we do the best we can to teach our children financial skills. Some of them might be faster at learning the skills than others, but we need to be teaching our children, and we need to be teaching each other. So we're trying with this podcast to help you understand the financial skills that you need to gain financial freedom and be able to retire or live off of your assets when you want to, and hopefully not have to work until the end of your life. Now, let's talk about kind of the basic points from the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki defines an asset and a liability. So I want to talk a minute about that. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So I'm sure you might have something that you want to buy that's a luxury item. Maybe it's a car or a big house or something. But most of those things would be classified as a liability because they cost you money. Now, there's other things that you can invest in. You could invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, anything that you put money into with the expectation to get at least the same or more money back is considered an investment or also an asset. So you probably know people in your life that you think make a lot of money. Maybe that's a doctor or an attorney or somebody like that. And it's true that they could be making a lot of money, but just because they're making a lot of money doesn't mean that they're financially free or wealthy. They might have to be working 100 hours. Well, they might be working overtime just to pay for their expenses because they're spending all or more than they make every year. So when we're talking about financial freedom and building our wealth, we want to point out that wealthy people, they don't become wealthy because they have a really large income. They become wealthy because they're buying assets that give them money back, and they're doing the best they can to reduce their expenses. Now, financial freedom is when you have enough assets paying you passive income on a regular basis to cover your monthly or yearly expenses. That is what financial freedom is. So if you could wake up every day and have money coming to you without working, and it would cover your housing, your food, transportation, all of those things, you could be financially free. Now, the interesting thing with financial freedom is the number is different for everybody, because there might be somebody who only needs, and I'm making some numbers up here, but maybe somebody only needs $30,000 a year. They've got their house paid off. They don't have any dependent people living with them. They just have to pay for basic food, clothing, and transportation. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where maybe there's somebody who wants to live this really lavish lifestyle, and they want to have 6 houses and 10 cars and maybe an airplane or something. Those people are going to need a lot more income every year just to support their lifestyle. So financial freedom is not a number. It's a lifestyle where you have your assets giving you passive income on a regular basis to cover your monthly or yearly expenses. So in this first episode, we're just talking about getting out of the rat race and financial freedom. In the second episode, we're going to be talking about your personal financial situation and helping you understand where you're at so you can know what it would take to get to financial freedom. And in the third episode, we're going to talk about passive investments. So the difference between active and passive investments and what that can really mean for you in obtaining financial freedom. So make sure to tune into the second and third episodes so that you can understand how you can apply those principles in your own life so that you can get to financial freedom and wealth much faster.
Thanks, Ben. When we decide whether a property is an asset or a liability, we sometimes get into a deep discussion on personal residences. Do you think that a personal residence is an asset or a liability?
This is a great question, Roger, because a lot of people feel that a personal residence is an asset. And if you use Robert Kiyosaki's definition, it could be either an asset or a liability. But he says that an asset makes you money and a liability costs you money. For the most part, a personal residence gives you a place to live, but it just costs you money. Even if you have it paid off, you're still going to be paying your taxes and your insurance. Now, you could argue that personal residence gives you appreciation over the long term, which is true if you end up selling the property. But if you don't sell the property, it's just something that's costing you money. Now, everybody needs a place to live, so you can't say you're not going to do that. But one of the principles of building wealth is to have a smaller personal residence at the beginning of your wealth creation and buy assets that provide more passive income for you, so that as you get more into your wealth building, you can have more passive income coming into your life so that you can have a larger personal residence if that's something you choose to do. So you can have your assets give passive income to you so you can pay for your liabilities, which could be a personal residence.
Agreed. And in my opinion, a house is a liability every day until you sell it and it closes, and then it becomes an asset post sale.
That's right.
So it's never truly an asset because it's never owned and an asset. All right. And then next, Earl has a story about his recent journey to get himself out of the rat race. Earl, will you tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's a story necessarily. We're going to talk a little bit about my journey. I appreciate these guys giving me a few minutes to try and personalize this idea of getting out of the rat race, so to speak. As I alluded to earlier, I went to school, got a degree in finance. I had grown up with a father that was, quite honestly, he was kind of anti-education, not really anti-education, but certainly wasn't going to encourage me to go off to college. And but I ended up there at the university, struggling to find my way through the university system. But I was on that path that Robert talks about with his poor dad, right? You go to school, you get out and you get a good job. I certainly graduated and thought I had a pretty good job when I got out. I was given an internship with the Institute of Real Estate Management, sponsored that internship. A company down in California hired me for the summer and put me to work. And man, what an incredible opportunity it became for me to just immerse myself in all sorts of things related to real estate. And it was at a unique time in our country. Some of you may remember the savings and loans disaster as the a lot of real estate melted down due to some government interference. The Tax Reform Act of 1986 made it not as profitable to hold real estate. A lot of assets went back, and I actually worked for a contractor that was doing, they worked for the RTC, the Resolution Trust Corporation, and we were helping take over these failed savings and loan assets. It was just an incredible experience. I quickly was given a full-time position and sent to San Diego. They started with fairly significant assets that I started to manage. And over time, I continued to work hard, move up in the company. And at one point, I worked for a developer that they went from 15,000 apartment units to over 40,000 apartment units in the 2.5 years that I was there with them. Put me in charge of renovating thousands of apartment units all over the country, and from my perspective, was doing fairly well. I had a fairly large salary for the time. Was able to, I took my kids on vacation. We enjoyed, whatever part of mostly in California, we enjoyed being able to go do things on the weekends. But through the process of this, I made more money. I started to drive a nicer car, lived in a little bit bigger house, probably took my kids on vacation a little bit more. And anybody who's been spent significant time at a university, most of us end up really, really dirt poor going through. And so you get out and it's almost like, oh my gosh, I've just got to, I've got to enjoy life. I've got to start to acquire some of these, what Robert Kiyosaki would call doodads, right? Through the whole process, the only asset to speak of that I owned, which technically isn't an asset, but I had, because we were in California and property was going up, my home was going up, and that was really the only money that I was able to save for a number of years. I left the development company and went to work as the vice president of a publicly traded REIT. I actually managed the whole Western United States, a number of assets in a number of different states. At one time I was traveling, I was on a different airplane every single day for a number of years, every day of the week, sorry. And after a while, when you first start traveling for a living, you wake up and think, my goodness, this is so cool that these people think enough of me to put me on a plane and send me out to do this or that, and buy me a nice dinner every night, and rent me a nice car, put me up in a nice hotel. But it didn't take very long to figure out that all I was doing was working. I was living to work, and worse, I was working to live, right? If I had stopped at any point in that I probably didn't have enough savings to last me more than 30 days. And so I think a lot of us find ourselves in that situation where we get on the rat race, literally, right? We pedal faster and faster, but we never really get ahead. We're always stuck in the same spot, needing a newer car, needing a bigger house, a little longer vacation, but never really being able to stop and get out of that rat race. We eventually, my wife and I came home back to Salt Lake City with the intent that we were going to start investing in our own real estate projects. And having come through a couple of development companies and large property management companies, I considered myself an expert at running the assets. But in typical big company fashion, they separated the people who run the properties from the people who raise the money. Needless to say, I came home and really struggled with trying to figure out how I was going to go raise the money to be able to start to work on some of these projects. And I reactivated my broker's license, doing real estate sales as a way to put food on the table, and get myself out there where I was looking for assets. The stress of it didn't take very long before my wife back then said she was done. I jokingly tell people, I've had a few friends that have come to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe what my wife just did. I'm so upset. What should I do?" And I always joke and laugh with them and say, however expensive you think it was when you said I do. And I jokingly tell people that when we say I do, it might be the most expensive decision we make in our lives until she says she doesn't anymore. And then you find out how really expensive life can be. So I went from a guy with a fairly large corporate salary to huge child support payments and struggling to I always had a place to live, but certainly wasn't. My life was not as easy, so to speak, as it had been in the past, and I had to figure out quickly how I was going to impacted my ability to keep my business up and running and keep it going. And one of the greatest blessings in my life was that eventually I came to the conclusion that I needed to go to work. There was a coaching company that happened to do all the coaching for Robert Kiyosaki at the time. And I went to work for this company and learned to teach real estate was really what they asked me to do. And it was as easy as could be to teach real estate. But even with all of my degree in finance and all the economics that I did and understood, I was still trying to do it the poor dad way. And as I went through and had to coach other people through helping them get out of the rat race, I was quite humbled to look at myself and say, "Oh my gosh, this is not where I want to be." And you're almost embarrassed to. I was a really good real estate coach, but I struggled to teach them all the concepts to get out of the rat race because I hadn't been able to do it myself. And so I continued to coach. And eventually was able to start to invest in some projects. I took a number of classes in how to raise money privately, how to put together a team, all sorts of things that you would need to do to be able to effectively run a business like I wanted to do. And again, I had a lot of the skills that I had learned when I was working for other companies. I certainly had a good head start, but it just seemed like there was one or two pieces that were missing. And the success that we've had as a team, the three of us, in the last maybe 2.5 years has just been astronomical, as I was able to let loose of trying to do everything myself and trying to rely on my educational background and those types of things that I had relied on, those things that made me successful when I was in the corporate world, and try to figure out exactly what it was going to take to be able to be successful in your own financial story. And that's where I'm so blessed and so grateful to be here where I am today. I'm really, really grateful to these two men that are here working with me today, because they have blessed my life like you absolutely wouldn't believe, as the three of us have in some cases struggled to find the right way to work together. We're all three independent personalities. We all want to do it our own way. We all bring very, very different skills to the table. We're working together for one common goal. And just we had dinner together just last night. The three of us took our wives up the canyon and enjoyed a year-end meal, the three of us. And I shared, I had to fill out a financial application for one of the projects that we're we've got it under contract. This is another project that we're trying to buy. We tried to get it done by the end of the year. We couldn't quite make it, so we're still working through it. But in the process of filling that out, I had to fill out a schedule of real estate owned and figure out net worth and that type of thing. And I shared with the group last night how over the last 2.5 years, how we have put together significant assets that the three of us own them together, along with a lot of other investors and that type of thing. But I had a situation about 2 weeks ago. My new wife came home. I say new. She and I've been married almost 18 years now, but she came home and had a friend pass away. A friend's husband passed away and left this friend with quite a bit of debt. And my wife was asking me some tough questions about, if you go, what would I do? And we had that experience just about a year ago. I had a tough bout with COVID, and the doctor said I was about nine out of 10 steps from cashing it in, so to speak. And so I spent a good month in the hospital. And even then, I remember thinking, my wife's not going to be able to know where all the assets. It's not that I try to hide them from her. She just doesn't pay attention and she doesn't understand. And so I called one of my sons in and said, here's where the money is. I moved some money from one account so that they made sure that there was plenty of money to take care of the things that she would need to. Said, here's my two partners' names and phone numbers, and you need to contact them, and they'll have lists of everything that to take care of. Well, like I said, I went through that a year ago, but as I sat there, and it brought tears to my eyes as I sat and told my wife, you don't pay attention to what we do in the business. And I laughed because she actually owns more of me than I own of myself. Literally, we had, the two of us had to go sign on a loan, and coming out of COVID, her credit score was a little better than mine, so they made her the principal on the loan. And so we had to go adjust the company that we had owned 50-50. Now she owns 51% of it, and I own 49%. So literally, I have to be really, really nice to my wife because she does own more of me than I own of myself. But what an incredible blessing it was to me to look her right in the eye and say, when that time comes, you're going to be just fine. And it gave me a chance to talk about some of the things that we have done as a group and as a team to be able to get ourselves so that we're much, much better financially prepared than we were even just 2 years ago. And I joke with people when they ask about my lifestyle. I joke that I get up every morning and I flip a coin. And if it's heads, I go motorcycle riding. And if it's tails, I come downstairs to work. And it seems like that's about where my life is today. Roger and I took 2 or 3 really long rides. We went to Sturgis last year. We rode out of Phoenix up into Salt Lake City, and we're trying to get Ben to go too. He's not as I think it's his wife that keeps telling him, no, you're not going to go ride that bike until the kids are raised. But anyway, I don't have everything that, you wouldn't look at my life and say, oh my gosh, he's got toys and stuff. I do have a few. I don't think I've got as many as Roger, but I'm up to 5 motorcycles now. And the joke when people ask me why, I just tell them I don't make my wife wear the same dress to church every Sunday. You can't expect me to ride the same bike to church on Sunday. So it's a good excuse to have more than one bike in the garage. But the truth is, I live a life today that I am really, really happy with where I'm at. And if we took off last week and went to watch the Rose Bowl, and that's what financial freedom is to me. It's not about how many toys you have. And I've got a few bikes, but none of them were very expensive. I don't have a ton of money in any of them. It's the ability to be able to say, gosh, that's a beautiful bike. I could see myself on that. Look at my wife. She winks and says, you've earned it. Go ahead and go for it. And so I hope that what we do with this podcast is to be able to inspire each and every one of you listening to this, to be able to say, whatever it is that you love to do, right? You don't all have to ride motorcycles. You don't all have to have a big boat that you take up. But there's something that you guys really want to do. And maybe it's pay for your kids' weddings when they come and have a nice wedding for them. Maybe it's to be able to take your wife to Europe once a year. Whatever it is, there's something that every one of us aspire to do that is well beyond getting up every single day and going to that job that we really hate so that we can continue to keep the lights on and put food on the table. And you here will inspire some of you, at least, that you will want to take those steps and be able to get yourself financially prepared. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Earl. That was a real touching story. Thanks for the kind words and for sharing all that with us. As we get ready, we're just finishing up recording this first episode, and we're going to get right into our next episode next week. And that's going to be how to prepare a plan to get out of the rat race. And how long will that take? And till then, we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Hope you got value from this episode. And if you have a minute, then take the time to leave an honest written review for the podcast, because we take those reviews seriously and it'll help us serve you better on the next episodes. And most importantly, be sure to start taking action so you can control your financial future today.